Jazzcast Pros.
Have you ever been in situations where you're like, I need to channel my masculine energy? Or maybe you feel like you need to lean into your feminine energy more. Maybe you have never heard masculine and feminine energy and you're like, Marshawn, what are you even talking about? Well, today's episode is for you if you can answer yes to any of those questions, because I sat in on a training with Raeanne a couple months ago, and as soon as we left, I was like, I need more of her energy in my life. Not masculine, not feminine. I need more Raeanne energy in my life, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear this conversation. We talk about what masculine and feminine energy looks like, how to embody it, why we need both, why we need harmony with both of those, and she has an incredible acronym that I think you are going to just really pull into your day-to-day. She walks you through how to go through these processes and really focus your mindset. You know, this season is all about mastering the mindset, and this is the perfect episode to really give you practical tips to work on your mindset. Welcome to High Vibe Table Talks, the podcast to help you, the cautiously ambitious woman, remove mental barriers and take action now so that you can achieve your high vibe desires. I'm Raeanne, your high vibe curator, cheerleader, and accountability partner. As a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur who recently quit my job to follow my dreams, I understand why you may be hesitant to throw caution to the wind and take that leap. I am very excited about our guest today. Welcome, Raeanne. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm so good.
Well, thank you for having me first and foremost. I appreciate being here today. We are from the same town in upstate New York, which is always fun to meet someone in person and then to be able to have a conversation like this. I am a holistic business coach and mother of three. I have been in personal development now between starting my career in counseling for 20 years, which is sometimes hard to believe. But yes, I've been doing personal development for 20 years, again, starting as a counselor. I'm also a certified Reiki master and a certified professional coach. And so I bring all of these different skills and abilities to the table for a very unique experience of business coaching with the clients that I serve. Typically experienced entrepreneurs who have a very strong connection to mission and impact and purpose. And they're really using their business as a personal development tool to help them to actualize, yes, their potential, their purpose, their mission, but also to grow their business and to have a really a great experience of their mission.
That's amazing. So I want to start off with the idea of the masculine and feminine. When we met at the Bossy Conference last month, you talked a lot about the harmony between them. And I think a lot of times we feel like in order to uplift one of those, we have to eliminate the other. So like, I want to lean more into my feminine, which means I can't be masculine. But I loved your idea that there is harmony and there's space for both of those. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think probably for the listeners, it's a good idea to slow down and share a little bit about what that even means, because I know it's a common language for you and I, but for someone else listening, they may not know what we mean when we say masculine and feminine. And so that's really how I talk about energy in life and in business. All things in life and business have this duality. There's the dark and the light, the up and the down. There's this connection and harmony of those two worlds. The masculine and feminine is for business ownership. When we think about masculine, we think about numbers, doing. This is the tactics, the strategy, the momentum, the build, the drive that comes from business, which is incredibly important. And for better or worse, that's where most business coaches spend their time. And most business owners think that business is about the masculine. How much are we earning? What are we doing? What do we got to do next? What are those key performance activities? And we do need to focus on that side of the business without a shadow of a doubt. And so often, business owners are missing the balance or the harmony of the feminine side of business. And the feminine side of business is who we're being, how we're receiving joy, fun, play, space, collaboration, community, connection. And I'm really in people's lives, whether they're men or women. This is a genderless, it doesn't have to do with gender or sex. This is about an energy that you're bringing business to help people to integrate those two worlds. Because not only are we need to have both in order to be successful, we can also become distorted in the masculine and the feminine. So a just example of a distorted masculine would be aggressive competition or grinding your way through life. An example of a distorted feminine would be this like shame, victim-y approach to life, gossiping or martyrdom. And so we can feel those things in our business at times. And so it's both about managing distortions in those energy and coming back to the healthy presentations of masculine and feminine and finding the integration or the harmony between those two, because we're dancing between them at any given moment. We need to lean on masculine or lean on feminine, and we need to have both of them in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm. How can someone know when they need to maybe tap into more of the masculine or tap into more of the feminine? Because I love how you talk about there's a healthy state for both of those. And so you do need both. And so how do you know maybe when you are getting into the more of the distorted masculine or the distorted feminine and kind of need to come back to the center?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer it in two ways. First, we have to start with knowing who we are and having a self-assessment of where we are in the situation. And so that requires internal work and it requires self-discovery. That's why I actually recently created a quiz. I don't think I told you about this, where I created a quiz where someone can go in and for free. It's at raeannelacatena.com/energy quiz. You can go in and the quiz answers 20 questions about how you typically show up in life. And it'll tell you whether you're being distorted feminine, distorted masculine, or healthy presentation or balance. And so some of those self-assessment tools to really learn how you're being is the first step. You can't know what to change if you aren't aware of how you're being. And so step one is self-awareness. And then step two is really looking at your results, which is a part of the self-assessment piece. If you are, for example, if you have a lot of money and not a lot of time and no relationships in your life, you're probably falling into a distorted masculine, or at least some distortion of the masculine and feminine. Because if we're grinding, pushing, forcing, we're putting 50 pounds in a 10-pound bag, and we're not focusing on developing relationships, nurturing communication, which is the feminine presentation. So our results are a really good place to look to see if we're leaning in one way or the other.
Yeah. I always say that entrepreneurship is the biggest like confronting experience you could ever go through. And the first thing is like being aware of what your results are. How are you presenting? And then once you have that awareness, now you have to, maybe modify to get the results that you want. And that can be hard because you're just like, no, I'm just a human being in my human experience. But it's very confronting to be like, if you want to build a business, then you have to do the inner work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's exactly what I help business owners with. What you're saying is very evolved. And so many people skip that step. They think, let me just do, get things done, and the business should be successful. But if we don't slow down and go inward, then we're missing the most important parts of business ownership. You have to be willing to be confronted in order to really dive into what this is and what can come from it. And you have to be willing to want to shift. I do meet a fair bit of people who are stuck and they like being stuck. They like staying in their comfort zone. They don't like to look at those hard parts of ourselves, have hard conversations with ourselves and others. And so they're not open, if they're non-confrontational, then they're not going to want to be confronted about all of the things that they could shift and grow in their business and in their life.
And I think some of that too goes back to like, if I deflect and look at all these things that are going on the outside, I never have to look inward. How can I fix my sales process, or how, like the tactical stuff that you talk about, instead of how can I show up differently? How can I change my energy? How can I have a mindset shift? You talked about harmony versus balance. And I love the power of words in that. And like, words are so powerful, both internally and externally, and shifting some of the times that you say balance to harmony. Why is that important to you and your clients?
There's a scale. When we think of the word balance, we think of this visual of a scale where we have to have everything lined up 50-50 in order to be successful. And that is just not how life works. And it is just not how business works. That we don't need to be perfect or balanced in order to be successful at all things in our life. Harmony infers that sometimes we can lean into one area or another, and that we can move freely and flow between different parts of our personal life, of our professional life, of our skills, of our strengths, of our weaknesses, of the masculine and of the feminine. And it just makes more sense, frankly, to let sometimes this part of myself be the leader in the conversation, to let this part of myself come to the front and center. And that maybe on the other sides and other days, we're letting some of it sink to the back. That applies to relationships too, right? Like if you're in a relationship, it's not meant to be a perfect 50-50 division of labor or a perfect 50-50 split in communication, that sometimes one of the folks in a relationship might need more from us. And so we let them have even 10% while we're giving 90. It's about paying attention to what's really happening in our life and integrating that into the rest of who we are.
Yeah. And I think that we want to build a business that serves us. And by grinding and burnout or martyrdom and those distorted masculine and feminine, we're not building a business that supports our lives. And that harmony also allows us to navigate the seasons. Like we were talking before we got on, like I'm very heavy into lacrosse season right now. And so I really have to find a good harmony, because after like 3:30, 4 o'clock, my business, there's no space in, my cup for business. And so really finding that harmony. But once lacrosse season is over, I can lean in more into the business in those sorts of hours. And so understanding the seasonality of life, of business, and I think allowing that give and take in a flowing way is really, it's powerful. It just feels like I have more control when I have that fluidity.
Yeah, it's empowering, it's centering, it's grounding also.
Yeah.
To be able to say, I acknowledge that this is the season of life that I am in. This is especially true for parents at different phases of life who are also entrepreneurs. I have 3 little ones under the age of 7 right now, and their need from me physically, emotionally, and mentally is going to be very different. I'm not saying easier or better. I'm just saying it's going to be very different when they're 14, 16, and 18 years old. And I like leaning into that season. That's such a great way to say it, that our business is going to need different things from us now than it will later on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the really impactful practices that you led us through during the conference was STEAR, CLEAR, and Anchor. Mm-hmm. And the first, it's so brilliant and it's so, like I said, impactful, but it doesn't take a lot of time. It's not like, let me spend the next 8 hours focusing on this. It's something that can help you pivot, but with a small amount of, because it's the small mindset shifts. The first part is the brain dump. Why is that an important first step before you get into the other parts of it?
Oh, I often joke because I was the kind of person who never, ever, ever journaled growing up. I actually am cleaning out my basement right now, and I found so many journals that had 1 or 2 pages that were filled out and then blank for the rest of the journal. I have always been, up until very recently in the process of building this framework, I've been resistant to the idea that journaling was even effective or, that I even wanted to participate in it. And since I've studied personal development and specifically leaned into the process of the free association or brain dump, there's this externalization that happens in the situation that we're currently in when we allow ourselves to get out of our brains and let that thing that we're thinking over and over and over and over and over again, whether this be in the middle of the night or the middle of our business day, to take the thoughts that we're having in our head, take them out of spinning in our brain, and to remove them through our arm, through our hand, through a pen onto paper. We see the situation that feels very real in our head in black and white or black and blue, depending on the color of pen you have, right in front of you. And you're able to see that some distance start to be created between the circumstance that you're in and that thing in front of you. Quite literally, it shifts the perspective just by getting it out of your brain so that you can begin thinking differently about it, because we need to create some space in order to shift the perspective. And so that brain dump is incredibly effective. Sometimes that's all you need, just to write it down and get it out of your brain. Like, I don't really need to worry about this anymore. This is ridiculous that I'm thinking this right now. And sometimes you need a little bit more. And either way, starting the process with getting it out of your brain onto paper is incredibly empowering. I'm a believer now in journaling.
Yeah. I saw once this image of why you work with a therapist, and it's this, your brain has like all this yarn and it's all tangled, and the therapist is just helping you unwind it into like a straight piece of yarn. And I think that's so true for business as well. Even last week, I was talking with my dad, who's like one of my business consultants. He's an entrepreneur as well. So I am lucky to have him as a sounding board for a lot. And just talking through something that was stuck in my brain and just getting it out of my head into like words with him was a conversation, but same thing with the brain dump. It brought so much clarity to what the next steps needed to be. So the next part is STEAR, which is a brilliant acronym. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So once you have this situation that you're going through, whatever it is, personal, professional, a small situation, a big, not so good situation that you're in, out in front of you on paper, the next step is to go through that process of organizing both the masculine and feminine side of things into two different categories. This isn't about creating judgment about what you're going through. It's really just about getting curious and creative and moving into, instead of stuck thinking or only thinking about the not so good side of things, we're also offering our brain an invitation to look at it slightly differently. And so STEAR is an acronym. S stands for situation. T stands for thoughts, E emotions, A is actions, and R is results. And so you list those letters down the page, STEAR, 2 times down the page, and you start to sort through, what are the thoughts that I'm having about this situation? Because the situation at hand is really just facts. You only want to focus on what are the facts at hand here. So often people will start to let their thoughts go into making meaning around a situation when really we just have this is where we are, a present moment context that we make mean different things with our thoughts, with our emotions, and with our actions. And so this, again, is about creating more space and more perspective about whatever we're going through by decoding what thoughts we're having, what emotions we're actually feeling, and how we could behave before we just launch into some kind of behavior. And then we can shift the results. We can truly shift the results by attending to our different thoughts, emotions, and actions. So you go through the process of listing whatever maybe negative, not so useful, or unproductive versions of those thoughts. And then you challenge your brain to get curious about how you could be more positive, productive, or empowering those different thoughts, emotions, and actions you could offer your brain. And inevitably, the results can shift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I have found that for myself and my clients is that making that shift from here is where I am and here is where I'm stuck versus how can I get curious and, like you said, creative about a shift, from where I am to where I want to be. That is so, like you said, empowering. That curiosity and taking the judgment out of it is really, really powerful. So I love that. And like you said, it's STEAR. And if you take 2 minutes on each of those, so you're at 10 minutes in total, you can be in a completely different mindset and headspace with whatever you're struggling with at the moment.
Right. Your goals. You can use your goals in this framework. You can use a personal relationship circumstance in this framework. You can use an idea that you have. It doesn't have to be heavy and negative all the time. Sometimes it's just, one of the things that we have to acknowledge as an entrepreneur is that we're the only people who can do the internal shifts and work that is necessary to be successful. And so we have this responsibility as an entrepreneur to go inward and think and to sort through and change perspective and to create, that we can't delegate to anybody else. Sure, maybe we can delegate social media. Maybe we can delegate paperwork or shredding or whatever you need to do to get your business done, but you cannot delegate internal curiosity, brain work, brainstorming, all of those things that need to happen inside of you as the creator in the entrepreneurial experience. So it's really important to do that. And yes, it can be incredibly empowering. It does not take a lot. And that's really the whole point of this tool, is that coaching is not meant to hold you hostage. I love to give people tools that they can do with me, yes, if necessary, but more importantly, on their own. Because the way the real world works is that things happen and you don't necessarily have your coach in front of you in that moment or your counselor in front of you at that moment. So this is really a self-coaching tool, and we can fill in the blanks. Like this happened yesterday on a coaching call. A client brought what she had done in her steer, clear, and anchor. And we celebrated how far she got in her perspective shift. And then we drew out of her just a few more positive elements and sprinkled in some more optimism and maybe a little bit more did you think about this perspective over here as well, to really continue that self growth? Because it's not about just the coaching relationship. It's also about the internal relationship that you have with yourself.
Yeah. And, on your website, you talk about like how you show up for one thing is how you show up for everything. And I think that this is a tool that allows you to show up differently, like you said, in relationships, in your life, in because I think we have relationships with more than people. Like there's a relationship I have with my business, with my home, with my, land, with my family, all those sorts of things you have a relationship with. And this allows you to create that space when making decisions in all of those areas of your life. And it's really cool seeing, just like it's very confronting, it allows you to change how you show up to all of those things.
Yeah. And then the secret sauce that is sprinkled in at the end of this tool is the clearing and anchoring part, which is, as you said, it's that holistic approach. Clearing is about letting go of that no longer serves you. It's releasing, it's forgiving, it's moving through, it's finding those tools that really let you let it go finally. Those negative thoughts that no longer serve you, those emotions or actions that used to limit you, we have to truly clear them. And then the anchoring side of things is bringing in new patterns, new habits, new ways of being, and anchoring in this new way of being through mantra and affirmation and repetition and structure and tracking. Yes, both masculine and feminine and both of those. What are those things that help us to remember, nope, we're not doing this anymore. We're doing this instead, because it is very useful to give yourself different perspectives. But if you stop there, you're going to fall back into old habits. And so you have to make a commitment to decide, how am I going to carry this new perspective into my life, into my business, into my money, into all the different parts of me that I am working on? Because it really truly is a mirror, and our brains are highly programmed to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. And they're shiftable. The neuroplasticity, the flexibility within our brain, we have to use it to our advantage, but we do have to create different mechanisms to support the change in the way that our behavior and our brains work. Yeah. And our bodies too.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to fall back. I mean, we've been doing that pattern, that mindset for a long, long time. I had someone talking about neuroplasticity on the podcast a couple months ago, and they talked about how like a new neural pathway is like creating a new path in your grass, like on your lawn. And so when you walk over it once, you don't see like a big impact. But if you walk over that same spot on your lawn every day for 6 months, the grass is going to wear down and you're going to see that new path. And like, I thought that was such a cool visual for when talking about new neural pathways, but the power of your brain, of the neuroplasticity to create those new pathways.
Yeah. The only thing I'll fold into that, because sometimes when people hear things like that, they think, oh I've done this pattern 100,000 times. That means I have to walk over that grass path 200,000 times to get a new change. And that's not all neuroplasticity is. Also, the cool thing is that there's these connections that form even when you're sleeping. After having made that impact, they'll shoot out a connection to this other piece, which solves the issue over here in relationships, or it connects it back to this habit around our physical wellness or our mental health. And so it does reconnect with other neurons and synapses too. So maybe something that you did many, many, many times, that domino effect can knock a lot of old patterns over actually pretty rapidly. So yes, there's work involved. Yes, you want to do repeat programming, and you don't need to, if you've been doing something for 40 years, you don't need to repeat it again for 40 years in order to make a change. And so you're worth the effort. It does require effort, but you don't have to repeat it as many times as you did it before.
Yeah. It's amazing how long and short like a quarter is. The amount of progress you can make in a quarter is incredible, because it's a good amount of time to make a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I always like to end with the lightning round questions. Raeanne, are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's go.
What is a must-read book?
Oh, one of the books that I recommend to pretty much all of the business owners that I serve is Crucial Conversations. It is an incredible book that gives you concrete, actionable tools to help you overcome major pitfalls in communication. And if you learn those tools, business, life, relationships, just fast track improvement.
What does creativity mean to you?
Creativity, first of all, business is inherently creative, which so many people don't really give enough airtime to. And that is because creativity to me is about being curious. It's about being open and open-minded. It's about being authentically you. It's about letting yourself have the space to just enjoy and to allow your brain to go to work on something from this place of pleasure and enjoyment instead of problem.
Mm-hmm. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Probably just be you, be authentically you, and everything else will fall into place. There are too many people out there who are trying to be somebody else and they keep falling flat on their face because they aren't being true to who they're meant to be. And there's this principle in economics, which is called marginal utility, where you're getting ahead of the curve. You're being useful in the marketplace and in business, but you can't be ahead of the curve, or you can't be out there and doing something different if you're trying to replicate what somebody's already doing. So really getting in touch with who you are as a human being and leaning into that will allow you to be as happy and healthy and wealthy as possible.
That's awesome. What is something that's on your bucket list?
Well, I have a bucket list item that I'm going to be able to cross off in the next couple of weeks, which I'm really excited about. I'm going to Bali.
Wow. How amazing.
I know. And I'm going for the business. I'm going by myself and going on this massive journey to this Mecca of this beautiful spiritual place that is just going to be so transformational. I'm so excited about it.
That's really cool. Very cool. And good for you, to take that time. And I mean, in your presentation, you talk a lot about energy and how our thoughts are so powerful and our energy is so powerful. And I think being in a space like that and allowing yourself to step away and be in that beauty of nature is going to be amazing.
That is exactly right. And that is the plan.
Yeah. What is, and this may be doubling up the question, but what is the coolest shit you've done in the last year or are currently working on?
I never expected this to be my story, but I became an international best-selling author in the last year, and I have another book on the way. And so I'm an author now. I am an internationally best-selling author. That's pretty cool and pretty surprising. It wasn't something that I had on my bucket list by any stretch of the imagination. It wasn't in my plan. It wasn't even in my purview. And here I am, 2 books in 2024. One is already out and doing well, and one is on the way and has some really, really cool things they're coming down the pike.
It definitely does. And we'll be sure to put links for both of those and your quiz in the show notes. Where else can people find you?
Well, I'm glad that you have links in the show notes because my name is Raeanne Lacatena. I'm the only Raeanne Lacatena in the world, but it is a little difficult to spell. And so you can find me at raeannelacatena.com on my website. I'm on LinkedIn pretty heavily. And again, LinkedIn at Raeanne Lacatena and Instagram, Raeanne Lacatena. So always just Raeanne Lacatena, but Instagram, website, and LinkedIn is where you will find me most heavily.
Thank you so much for joining. It was so wonderful to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It means a lot to me.
How incredible is Raeanne? She is just, I'm sure after listening to that, you can hear why I was like, I need you on my podcast. I need to talk to you. I need to hear more from you. My audience needs to hear more from you. And I am ready to steer, clear, and anchor. So I would love to hear your favorite tidbit. And I know that in going through those exercises with Raeanne, I was really able to see even subconsciously where my thoughts are versus where I want them to be. So mindset is such a crucial piece in growing your business and learning how to pull yourself out of the limiting beliefs and towards empowered beliefs is really impactful. And so Raeanne's doing incredible work. Make sure you go follow her. If you got something out of this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. Those always help the algorithm and help for more people to hear these episodes. Suddenly, someone shared my podcast somewhere in Scotland yesterday. All of a sudden, I woke up and I had almost 90 downloads from Scotland just yesterday. So that was pretty cool. So feel free to share, leave a review. Any of those help. So thank you so much for listening, and remember that big dreams and small steps will transform your life.